Yes.
They just like to slide in when everybody least expects it.
That's right.
Yep.
Brainstorming all his witty jokes.
Yeah. That's fine. It gives me time to let this coffee kick in. I indulged a little too much last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, but like part of it was I was just having such a good day working in the snake room, and then Rachel got home from work and she just needed to go out, so we went out and got a couple of drinks, and then came back and had some more, and I lost count. And I woke up and I was like, that was too many for sure. So, but welcome to all our audience members. This is
welcome.
The not famous, infamous Carpets and Coffee.
Yeah, I'm breathing. I'm alive.
Yeah. You were grabbed by the asthma monster last week.
Woo. Yeah, that was a rough one, man. I went and got tested for COVID because I was so exhausted and I couldn't breathe. No matter what I did, I couldn't breathe. And I'm like, oh my God, I must have COVID. But nope.
Just
asthma. So
glad you didn't. I had to get tested a couple days ago too. I just got a super bad sore throat and I was freaking out, but
right.
No COVID, double negatives. So weird.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I get the shot sometime next week, I think. So
yeah, Rachel is getting her first one on Thursday.
Nice.
Yeah. So
the future is here.
Yep.
It's disturbing how many Ish has got a quick rant. His disturbing on how many people
I sympathize with that one.
Don't understand genus and species. Wow. Yes, this is true.
Yeah, I mean it's very important. Some people when they first hear about it might think it's just extra classification that's not worth knowing, but it is very important, especially when somebody's talking about breeding, because when you're talking about breeding, you need to make sure you're doing the responsible thing by that species.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's 100%. Where that's just the real simple nuts and bolts of it. Beyond that, it's cool to know all the different, relationships of everything and fully understand animals. That's where the taxonomical relationships are important.
I think, so I'm just going to give you guys kind of know already, but on tomorrow when NPR comes out, we talked to Dr. Zach Loafman, and we were talking about snake digestion. And, I think when I asked the question, I asked it like, so let's talk about snake digestion. And he's sort of like, well, there's 2,700 different species of snakes. So how do we break this down? And it was interesting because he sort of tied it in on like how cool snakes are on the inside and like how they've evolved to do certain things that they have adapted to do in the wild so that they can survive. But, it's just, man, I don't know. It's really cool when you start to look at that and understanding the relationship between different species and genus. And, I don't know. I geek out on that stuff, but
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And it's important for other reasons too. I mean, there's certain groups of animals within a genus that maybe one of them, and they can look alike, right? There's a specific example of this that I don't remember the exact species, but you can have two species in the same genus that look alike, but maybe one is like a CITES listed species and the other one isn't. And if you don't know which one you got at that point and you're importing, I was just watching, sorry, bad way of saying it. I was watching the new Animals at Home podcast, and he had somebody who is a professional importer on, and she was discussing this. So if you know you have the right genus, but you don't know that you have the right species and they look the same, one will get you in jail. The other one, you're in the clear. So it's very important.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it matters for sure.
Oh. Speaking of genus, species, and understanding Latin names, we have the king of critical thinking, Nipper Reed here. If you say Latin names wrong, you can expect this man to come after you.
You're gonna get judged.
Yeah. And heaven forbid you say niche wrong, because that lowers the population rate one hooker at a time.
100%. Ooh.
Well, I might have to wait a minute. I just saw what Ish put up. I think I might have to agree. Well, I'm not going to say it's so rude that, you should do some research, but Bredli is a full species and coastals are not. So Bredli is actually a sister species to the carpet pythons. So therefore, yes, it would be a true hybrid.
Yes.
Indeed.
And in the newest Australian reptiles book, they elevated both Imbricata and Bredli to full species status. So
Bredli already had full species.
yeah, but in some literature in Australia, they classified it as
Spilota.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know everybody wasn't on board with that. My bad.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones where everyone should have been on board, but just for absolutely no reason, certain folks decided, looks like a carpet python, must be a carpet python.
Sure.
Amateurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nipper, how are you doing?
Yeah,
man.
How are you?
How is everybody?
Excellent.
Got a lot of coffee going.
That is a French press and a half.
Yes, sir.
I got my coffee from Papua New Guinea. Never.
Ooh,
It's Papua New Guinea coffee.
that's cool. Well,
It's
I'll be drinking tea.
Tea. Oh, it says Nipper on it.
I'm drinking tea.
Tea.
What
What
else?
kind of? Just straight tea. No milk,
Just
no sugar.
straight tea. It's pure and lovely. Why would you pollute it with anything?
That's right.
Truth. Just like coffee. Why pollute it?
Well, I guess before we get into it, right? Nipper, I got my other book. You're probably not going to like this, but this is the guide to Central American snakes.
Oh no, I've gone on a real king snake rabbit hole. I'm obsessed. So now Central America is good.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Central North America.
That's even better.
Yeah.
There can't be a North American book that I haven't got now, surely.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Man, there's so many species we got here. Uh-oh.
At some point, this might have to happen. We might have to do some. We might have to do a thing, and we'll keep a tally. And first one to lose gets stingy leg slaps.
So, do you got something lined up or what? What are we? Reading? You want me to open a book and try to find a name and see who can pronounce it, or what?
Yeah, I mean, we could all. Well, first of all, I don't know how many of our audience don't know Nipper. If they don't, Nipper, would you like to go through the collection you maintain currently, and feel free to throw the Latin out there and really blow some minds if you care to.
Well, okay. If I can remember, I promised myself when I moved recently, or a couple of years ago, I promised myself I would keep less snakes, but enjoy keeping them more.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I keep listening to people's podcasts. Keep describing how great it is to keep such and such species and so on, and how nice it is to see American species when you're out herping. So my idea of keeping 30 snakes has now reached 70 snakes. And I have, yes. And I have, as soon as lockdown, I know it's slightly different for you guys, but lockdown is really strict here. As soon as lockdown's finished and we can get to some shows and things like that, I have a list of about another 30 species that I definitely and they're all North American.
Yes.
Something that I don't know if you've got an agenda, but something I might talk about later on is I've always mostly kept Asian species or African species, but now I really want to completely redo my snake building, start from scratch, and it's pretty much with one or two that I will be keeping from Asia and Africa, but pretty much it's going to be North American species. And
Wow.
we'll have maybe a little chat about that later. But
That's
you want to
awesome.
know what I've got, so I'll do my best to remember. I have Atheris broadleyi,
Mm,
Atheris leachii,
mhm.
Atheris squamigera,
Classic.
Atheris chlorechis,
Mm.
Cistruris miliaris barbari. Do you want me to do
Ah.
the common names as well?
Nah, leave people in the dark. They can learn. This is how we teach them.
Yes.
Okay.
Riley, do you actually know what these are? Or
I
you-
do. I
Okay.
do.
Hell
Yes.
yeah.
I have Cistruris miliaris streckeri.
Mm.
What else we got? I'm trying to work my way around the room in my mind. I have Boiga flavescens.
Oh.
What's above that? I have Boiga nigriceps. I have adult pair Hog Island boas. Absolutely stunning.
Those
Really
are
nice.
killer.
I have maclots, water pythons, or water pythons, as Eric would say.
Worder.
Water.
Worder.
Warder.
Water pythons. I
Oh,
have
you.
way too many North American pine snakes.
Nice.
I have rosy boas,
Mm.
Pyromelana, loblocki.
Yep.
What else? I have Jamaican boas.
Those are beautiful.
My favorite.
Your favourite, mate? I've only got 9, but
They're like the boa equivalent of Bredli as far as their look and the color change from black to
Yeah.
yeah,
I love oh my goodness. Those
they
are
are
amazing.
such an underrated species. They stay really slim. They're almost
Mhm.
scrub-like.
Hmm.
Heads are really angular.
Yeah.
They're super rare. I don't know what the availability is like in the US, but in Europe, they're super rare.
They're pretty rare here. There's maybe a handful of folks that have some breeding and ever get some. So
I know
it's
three.
yeah, yeah. That's probably
I
extent
put
of
my
it.
2 biggest pairs together this season. So we'll see what happens. What else have we got? Boiga dendrophilia,
Mhm.
Langerhans madagascarensis.
Beautiful.
I've got 2 nice breeding groups of those.
Oh, I love those.
My big thing that I want to breed, because no one's done it in Europe. I know one chap in America's done it, and only one,
Okay.
but nobody in Europe's ever bred them. I mean, they come in gravid sometimes, but to actually
Sure.
breed, no one's ever done that. I have what else have we got? Madagascar cat snakes.
Mm.
What else is next to that? Madagascar IJs, which I'm excited for this season because
There we go.
I've
There we go.
not done anything with IJs before. This is my first pair I've got, and they're wild caught adults, so quite excited.
Nice. Very nice.
What else do we have? Oh, Apodora. Put those together.
Yeah. Those are
Scrubs.
kings.
Scrubs.
Mhm.
It's bad when you're forgetting things. Amazon tree boas. Lots of felsumas. You don't want all the felsuma species, do you?
We can lump them all together.
Okay. Grandis, Madagascarensis.
Oh shit.
Standing eye, Kochi eye.
Oh, those are cool.
They're really nice. They're one of
Yeah.
my favorites. Really underrated.
Yeah, we've got a couple of them in the shop right now. They're beautiful.
They're super hard to get hold of in Europe. I don't know what they're like in the US, but I think out of the Grandis sort of,
Yeah.
I think they're by far the nicest.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else have we got? We've got some little day geckos. The Williams eye.
Mhm.
Got some big African bullfrogs.
Yes.
Lots of North American tiger salamanders. Amazing things.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I can't keep those.
Yeah, nope.
Is that because they're like you? Or you just can't keep them, you just kill them?
No, you have to have permits for those here in California.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
California tiger salamander are
Yep.
regulated pretty heavily.
But yes, I would kill them as well because they need a cold space.
Yeah, that's the
It's
problem.
hot. It's hot where I'm at.
They're kept outdoors.
Yeah. So
I think what else I've got. I think that might be it. Oh no,
Right.
corns. I've got some corn, different various corns.
yeah.
Brettles.
Preddles.
Rainbows.
Oh, rainbows. Yeah, rainbow boas. Rainbow boas. Yeah, there's a few bits and bobs. But it's all, a lot of it is going to be sold as soon as the European shows start again. And I have an absolute raft of species that I want to buy. They're all North American.
Nice.
Mainly king snakes and milk snakes and rock rattlesnakes. Focus on
cool.
Yeah.
What locality rosy boa are you working with?
These are, I don't have a specific locality in terms, I can tell you it's the coastal favourite rosy boas, but which is my favourite. Annoyingly, and we've all done it, I used to have a big collection of rubber boas and rosy boas.
Oh, nice.
But when I got into venomous, I sold everything and just focused on venomous for a while. I used to have a lot of venomous. And I really regret selling the rosy boas because in Europe, they're really hard to get.
Interesting.
So are king snakes, all but except for the common ones like the Hondurans and things like that. I used to have a nice group of Zonata.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Just can't now. The one at Scarlet king snakes, just cannot get for love nor money. The Andean king snakes, they're super rare over here. There's so many cool king snakes. I really want the integrades that Eric showed me. Just fantastic. But they're the Eastern Coastals, you call them over there, don't you? Is that right? Yeah. Just stunning. I need those. Oh, Theori, Pyromelana. I want some more of those. It's just tons of them. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You really can't run out of options in that group at all.
It's I mean, I know they've just recently redone the taxonomy, so now in real terms there's only 7 king snakes, but
there's so many subdivisions of that.
I mean, like, is it I think there's something like 20 subspecies for some of them, for the triangulum and stuff like that. It's incredible. You're so spoiled, you just don't appreciate it. Honestly, I'm always back to Eric about, Australia's so fucking wonderful, but cool. But North America has got so many more species and such a I know I moan at you every time I see you, Eric. I just do this. But if you look at the snakes you have, just the massive evolution of snakes that you have in the States, it's incredible. You know, you've got evolution for so many Asian species. You've got the lyre snakes, and you've got the night snakes, and you've got the shovel noses, and you've got the rosy boas and rubber boas, and then you've got all the different rattlesnakes. It's I want to go to Australia.
Grass is always greener on the other side, right?
I want to go everywhere.
Yeah, that is the trouble. I want to go everywhere, but I've got 3 more places that I need to visit in Europe. Then I've seen everything in Europe, every single species. So I've got 5 more. I know it's taken me 10 years, but I've got amazing. 5 more to photograph. And then I'm just hitting the States like a $10.
Have you dipped into any of the Asian rat snakes? Any of those over your keeping years? Anything like
no, yes and no. In Europe, we have some populations of released animals that are bred and are now really established.
Oh, wow.
So I went to photograph the Russian rat snakes in Holland. What a speed. They're just beasts, absolute beasts. If I wasn't going to go down a North American trend, I would consider keeping the Russian rats because they're almost like Bolini, really. They're black with the really solid faces. Really like them. They get quite big.
Mhm.
We've got populations of cave rats in Europe, in Belgium now, which are doing really well. A tropical species, how they're surviving in a country that has the climate of Belgium is beyond me, but they're becoming almost a problem.
Oh shit.
I'm trying to think what other rat snakes. No, I briefly had Janseni.
Oh, those are nice.
No, they're not. They're white and hissy and didn't like it very much.
Sounds like my hog nose, hissy, and they don't like me very much.
Hognose. I love some hognose. Unfortunately, in Europe, we can get Western hognoses, obviously, because of all the morphs and all that sort of thing. They're very easy to get hold of. Any of the other hognoses, almost impossible to get hold of.
Nothing from Madagascar.
Myself, well, I've got the Langarhar, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, I've kept all of the Madagascar hognoses.
Okay, so they are available over there.
Yeah, they come in as wild caught, right. Quite regularly. I think all that's going to end. I would suggest anyone that's into Madagascar, get what you can now, which is why I've got so many Langarhar.
That's what I've been saying to anybody about Papuans, about anything that's available to come as an import. If there's value to have import blood, and it's not like a cheap, devastating sort of irresponsible sort of thing. Get what you can now, because if you thought it was hard before, it's harder now with COVID. It's brought a lot of, extra attention to the subject matter. So
absolutely.
I would say anywhere in Asia, particularly Madagascar. Grab you can, because they're not. It's going to be. I think it's going to go the way of Tanzania. Yes, again, I used to have a lovely collection of Atheris certiphora, the little horned bush vipers.
Right.
I actually bred those, which was nice, but I thought, I'll sell them. I can get some more. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
And then overnight, Tanzania closed its borders, and a snake that was £100 is now £2,500 overnight. And the availability,
Wow. Did you ever have any reproductive success with the Leoheterodon?
No, I didn't. To be fair, it was. I didn't give it the attention it deserved, I would say. I was focusing heavily on the Asian Trimerosaurus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I had quite a decent collection of those.
Those are beautiful.
So I didn't put any effort into breeding. I just like them. Particularly the blondes were my favourite. I think stunning snake.
Yeah.
Again, something I would consider again keeping, particularly now, as I think they're going to get harder and harder to get hold of.
Yeah.
But you can't keep everything.
Yeah. I mean,
what?
Two problems in the same sentence. Can't keep everything, and things are hard to get.
Our houses are small.
I live in an apartment.
Yeah, same. Yeah, me too.
This is all in an apartment.
What are you talking about? Houses?
House prices are extortionate in the UK, like ridiculous. And for not a very big house. I mean, I live close to London.
Sounds like California.
Yeah, Bay Area.
One of those things. If I moved up north to Scotland or somewhere like that, for the price I paid for my house, I could have acres of land around me in a 6-bedroom house.
Sure.
It's like how all these Bay Area people are moving to Texas. They can, turn their apartment into a little mansion property.
So, my fiance is very patient with me. If not many women would let you have a building in the garden that is full of snakes, some of which are venomous, and all the stuff that goes with it, like the breeding mice and
once they've had it in the house, they realize the benefit of having it not in the house, and then all of a sudden you've made them look like the superhero for coming up with this idea that you already had anyway.
How dare you expose secrets? What's wrong with you?
Pro tip for anybody listening.
No, mate, you're right. But I would, if I move again, I will completely change how I do a snake building. This is the third time I've built a snake building from scratch, and every time you do it, I think you learn something.
Of course.
For me now, particularly with the venomous, I think space is better than having lots of snakes.
Mm-hmm.
So more space to work with the snakes, less racks or less fibs and things like that. And I do think keeping snakes from the same continent really makes a difference. I mean, I would go into probably heating the room rather than the vivs. If I did that, I would then just have deep heat emitters rather than heaters in the vivs as well.
Gotcha.
So many different things I'd like to do. So yeah, I think North America, the only things I will keep that aren't North American will be the Apodora, because I'm not getting rid of the Apodora.
Smart man.
I think one of mine is just over 13 feet and the other one's 13 and a half feet. And I know everyone goes, "Oh, scrubs are so strong and intelligent."
Bullshit.
Dude, my
See,
Apodora is hands down like the smartest animal in the room, and I've got Crebos that like watch and study me. The hognose up there watch and study me, but this thing, I'll open the enclosure, and if he's looking at me, he's checking me out. He knows, and I can approach him like a monitor lizard under his head, and he knows exactly what's going on, and he tells me how he's feeling. If he doesn't like to be picked up a certain way, so I have to, build the trust going underneath him. And when he's out, he's observant. He's holding on. And for like a 1.5 year old snake at 4 feet something long, the dude is just built. He's lean and he just holds on with little effort. He's just amazing. I love that snake.
A lot of snakes, herping around the world. I have never held anything, including things like Waternesia, which is, it's supposed to be a really tough snake, and things like that, and retics and stuff in the wild and that.
Mm-hmm.
But I have never encountered a snake as strong as Apodora.
Yeah.
I mean, they eat scrubs, but it's
my first experience with an Apodora was like 6 or 7 years ago, maybe more than that. Down in Southern California during one of the reptile shows in Pomona, and Todd Dyer brought me over to check out his collection and showed me some stuff, because I was very green then, so he's kind of taking me under his wing, and we pulled a clutch. He was teaching me that stuff, showing the collection, teaching me a lot of the basics, and then he was showing me some cool stuff that he had, and he pulls out his big female Apodora, who's deep in shed, but I'm not kidding, like 100%. That big around, huge animal, pulls her out, throws her around my shoulder, and most of her is like down and on the floor, and then her head's kind of around, and she just kind of casually does this thing where she just turns, and then I see the eye turn in her socket, and like the short tongue flicks, and I was like, holy crap. It was like palpable how much was going on upstairs in that animal. And just the weight and the density, how boas, like a 6-foot boa compared to a 6-foot python of pretty much any species, the boa is heavier and denser.
Yeah.
Apodora are the exception to that rule. This thing around my shoulders, it was heavy because of the size and mass of it. But honestly, I could feel that this animal was barely using any muscle to hold on. And all it really needed to do was just kind of go whink if it wanted to just like put me down. And the thing was so strong, and I could just dude, it was an encounter that I'll never forget for sure.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's awesome.
They are just incredible snakes. It's the one, or both of them, they're the only snakes that I'm hesitant to deal with when I'm in the snake room on my own. I mean, I don't mind dealing with venomous, or even some of the scrub, or whatever. Sansinia was another species I've got. I forgot.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, which are quite big. But yeah, it's only those that I hesitate to deal with on my own.
Yeah. I've already told my significant other, Rachel, that this species, although small now, will be big to the point where when I have 2 of them, or when they're big, even regardless of how many I have, it'll be something where I let her know when I'm working with them, like, hey, if you don't hear from me in 10 minutes, come check on me, So, because that's the only snake that I want in my collection that is capable of doing something like that. as much as I love berms and, maybe one day I'll get into scrubs, but I don't consider scrubs like I wouldn't get into the really massive, but I don't know. That being said, my big rainbow boa almost put me out once. So she's a big girl. So yeah.
I think the only snake I've been intimidated by besides Apodora would be King Horneye, the wild one that Rob rescued from the road. And it wasn't until you saw that head kind of like come back around and it's like the size of your hand and you're like, "Ooh, that would." Yeah. That
Need
was,
those for your collection, Eric.
I do.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
I'll have to just have the Meralkis for now, or Marukis or whatever.
Now, is it correct that it should be King Horny?
I would say King Horny. Yeah.
Yeah.
King Horny. Okay.
Oh, you
Horny.
gotta love that.
So, okay, here's how I've learned to correct myself mentally. It's like and correct me if I'm wrong. When it's a single I at the end, it's pronounced E, and when it's two I's, it's EI.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's difficult for English speakers, and I just about count Americans as English speakers. It's the Y of the hard thing. So,
Yeah.
do you know the Latin name for tree frogs?
What's that?
The tree frog genus. How would you pronounce the tree frog genus?
Litoria, like the
North American ones and the European ones. I don't want to say.
Is it
the hypo?
Begins with H.
Sudacris?
Sudacris.
Sudacris?
No. It's the genus is Hyla.
Oh, Hyla.
Exactly. See, that's how an English speaker would say it. Hyla.
Okay.
It's actually pronounced Hila.
Gila. The Y is an E sound.
Yeah. If you get a Y, it makes a different sound. But for us, we would say Hyla. What about cobras?
Nausea.
Again, that's how I would say it because I'm an English speaker. But it should really be Naya, shouldn't it?
Naya. Okay, because that's how I've heard like Rom Whitaker refer to them as.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's difficult. I mean, Latin favors. I mean, most of my people that I go herping with in Europe are European.
Okay.
So brought up, most Europeans, apart from the English, because we used to own the world, we just don't bother to learn any other languages. Most of our European friends speak about 5 languages. It's just normal because the European countries are all so close together. You can just hop across the borders.
Sure.
Right.
Because Latin is obviously an Italian-based language, their pronunciation of Latin is fantastic, and they mock me to the point that I cry myself to sleep most of the time when I'm away, just at my English pronunciation of things.
Well, the thing is, Latin, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of the language of the scientific community, and it was one of the oldest written languages, right? And that's why that's kind of like the basis and the standard. So, I think Americans are just
modern Italian has a basis in Latin.
Right.
So
yeah,
any European speakers, they speak Latin.
Sure.
They pronounce Latin really nicely.
Okay. That makes sense. Because the American culture, they, unless you elect to include that as part of your curriculum later on in like high school and stuff, that's just not part of it. It's just the same as like how the metric system is not used here, but it's used globally.
Yeah.
Classic.
We said screw everything. We're not learning anything new.
We're making up
America.
our own. Your ruler isn't good enough. We like our numbers.
What's
you
funny?
got meters? Well, I got 2 feet, and I'm going to use them.
I remember I remember as a kid them trying to initiate. I think it was in 2nd grade, and they were trying to get America to adopt the metric system, and I guess we're just too dumb. I don't know.
Man, I wish we did, because
We're
now
just
in grad
stubborn.
school, I got to convert everything.
Yeah,
it's
I know,
all
it's a pain in the
meters
ass.
and Celsius.
I guess it was hard at first, but it's just like anything. You learn it, and then it just becomes, normal.
Do you not use the metric system though for firearms and stuff?
millimeters and
Yeah,
yeah.
It's not millimeters.
we do it. Yeah, if we're going to shoot you, we use
Americans know how to talk in guns.
Of course they do.
It's interesting because there's an Exoterra thermostat that it's a really simple, basic one where you dial the dial on the back, and that's in Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. So it's interesting. So you said this is going to be your first season attempting to breed Harrisoni, correct?
Indeed,
Harrisoni.
Harrisoni. Damn it. That's right. Crap. I blew it. I'm just going to pour steaming hot coffee on me.
So, Nipper, how did you do it? You just put it together and call it.
Believe it or not, I listened. There's a show you might have heard on the radio. I listened to NPR for my sins. Again, I know you go, oh, why no one wants to know? Every time you do one of your breeding ones, it is fantastic. Even if I've listened to NPR pretty much from the start, which is why I look like this.
Me too.
And even though I've heard you do a breeding show so many times, I must have heard, I don't know, 10, 8 or 9, something like that.
We've did 9 of them, yeah.
Yeah, you've done 9, yeah. It's still, every time you do it, even if it's like a little bit of reformation of what you're doing, and it's evolving as well, because as you know 9 years of keeping, you're making mistakes and you're correcting them, you're seeing what works, what doesn't work. So even the same format of a show will still have so much new information, and you're talking to other people that are breeding the same sort of species. So much information comes out. I could listen to pretty much any podcast. There's a couple that I can't bear, but I would listen to pretty much any podcast. You normally find something.
Yeah.
I'll listen 100%. To a podcast on, species that I have no intention of ever keeping or have a particular interest in them, because it's still, you might find something about keeping that you can relate to the species that you do keep. But in answer to a long-winded answer for your question, I listen to your show, and basically all my stuff, and I'm sure you all do too, all my stuff, I light cycle. I really, really think food cycling is so important. I've spoken to Rob and Keith at Pekin at length about this. I really do think that is super important. Yeah. And temperature cycling as well. So again, for all the species that the non-hibernating species, that's what I do. So yeah, as you know, I got them fairly recently, so I wasn't expecting anything this season because I haven't had time to settle in or anything like that. But I did call them for a bit, not as long as I would have liked to. I called them for a bit. I did food cycling for a bit, and I just thought I'll put them together and just see what happens because I've got them. And I walked in. I think we've been really lucky in the UK, or unlucky, depending on your point of view. Our weather has been unseasonably cold this year. A lot of snow, which we don't normally get that much snow, but we've had a lot of snow, and we've also had a lot of weird one-day snow, the next day 14 degrees type weather. So there's been a lot of cold fronts coming. It's been really odd, and I have noticed, particularly with the rattlesnakes, the day the cold front hits, the males are all over the females. Now the temperature kind of drops significantly because they're in a building that is pretty much temperature controlled, so it must be something else. It must be an air pressure thing or something like that, because the temperatures will drop a little bit because the heating comes down at night, so there might be a temp drop because the outside temperatures are cooler, but it won't be that significant. I can't, it's an insulated building, so it must be a pressure thing, or I don't know. But I definitely noticed that I get, when these cold fronts come through, I see a lot more mating activity and a lot of sheds as well.
100%. Yeah, I think so last night I was watching there was some show, it was it's called Wild Australia or something like that, and so they were talking about how how the weather is sort of like, some years they'll have, major drought, and they were. I actually was talking about kangaroos, right, and how during the drought that, I guess they kick the joey that's outside the pouch off of milk first, then they kick the joey that's inside the pouch next, and then the mother will just cut off milk altogether after that because she's hoping to survive so that she can breed again, rather than have I guess the little joey that that little pink little joey that climbs out, looks like a pinky. But anyway, so it got me thinking, right? And I just want to throw this thought out there and see what you think. I wonder if there's ever been a study done, because we talk about pythons breeding, or just snakes in general, right? That they don't breed every year because those factors really play a part in whether or not they would produce again. And it's sort of like even stuff out, so you don't have an overabundance of one species over another. So I'm thinking like, okay, so to keep the kangaroos in check, because I imagine kangaroos are kind of like deer here on the East Coast, right? They're all over the place. You have to call them. You have to. I don't know if it's like, is that like that on the West Coast? Deer all over the place,
they're
jumping
everywhere.
into cars. Okay,
Yeah.
So you guys understand, right? So we have to actually go and call them. They have a season where you go and get, take them out. So I'm wondering if this is like nature's way to sort of make sure that, checks and balances are in place. I mean, so like, even if they wanted to breed every year, they're not going to because of the conditions. So I think a lot of times that we take for granted the outside weather and how it affects the animals that we're keeping, when we really think that we did something wrong, but maybe the triggers that are outside are not necessarily get on the go. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and those very same conditions might be affecting the snakes indirectly too, depending on what that weather is doing on, say, the prey species in the area and whatnot. Food abundance is going to be impacted by that too, even if the snake isn't directly.
Right.
So for sure. Oh, Riley, you're muted.
You're muted, Riley.
It seems like it's a cycling around rain and the hydration, because that starts the grass, which feeds the bugs, which feeds the rodents, which the whole food web sort of thing. It's all around water, and even if they're not experiencing the rain because they're in an insulated building, they're living under human care. They're feeling the pressure changes, like we were just talking about.
And that's why I'm so curious what this new era of sporadic changing climate is going to do for species that are dependent on those kinds of cues for reproducing.
Well, it's pushing seasons 100%. Later and later,
Right. And then, wet areas getting wetter, dry areas getting drier. It's just weird, unpredictable weather events. It's so interesting. It doesn't necessarily change what a lot of mammals are doing for reproduction, but species like reptiles that are so keyed into that for their cycling, it's like same with migrating animals. What's going to happen?
I think about the whole. I've been down a timber rattlesnake because we're trying to finish up this episode of Student of the Serpent, but they're coming out of their dens in usually it's around maybe like May, once the temperature sort of gets to a certain, but I'm wondering, like, is that going to throw them off if, like, because I think of all these crazy winter, like this winter, we're having a crazy winter where it's similar to what Nipper's having, where it's, just snow, and crazy temperatures, super low. I don't know. How is that going to affect them in the long term if they're cued to come out, if the temperature hits a certain thing and they're cued to come out? I don't know. Could affect them, I guess.
For sure. Yeah.
And also, conversely, with rising temperatures, I wonder how it affect rock rattlesnakes that are high elevation if the temperatures are going up.
Right.
I mean, it'd be a good thing for rock rattlesnakes because they'll have longer to feed and breed, and for the youngsters to be above ground, I would think so.
Right. Yeah, it's like in the Sierras, the pine beetles. They're supposed to freeze in the winter when it gets really cold, and that kind of kept them at bay. But all the forests are getting decimated because it's not getting that cold, and they're active year round, just taking down tree after tree after tree. And the conventional wisdom is that at least what I was taught as an environmental studies major, was that creatures in these warming areas are going to move to higher elevations and higher latitudes. But that's, you know, you could only go so far with that. You know, you can't squeeze everything up up to the top of the mountain, if you will. So
we're having a problem in Europe. We've got lots of what we call rock lizards, and these are small lacertids. They're high altitude lizard species for all the major mountain ranges in Europe. I've seen them all, and they're really, really rare. And you've literally, you know, to find them, you've got to climb mountains to see them and photograph them, which is great. But we're having a problem now with some of these species that are incredibly rare. I mean, you're talking, you know, some populations of these rock lizards are just on one mountain. That's the whole population for a particular species on one mountain.
Crazy.
And because it's warming, and as you say, because species that aren't normally high altitude species can now go higher up,
right,
they're getting out competed by wall lizards, which are quite robust, bigger lizards, the lacertids that we get, which are normally lowland lizards. But because they can get higher up, they're out competing, they're taking all the prey, and the rock lizards are having to go higher and higher. It's quite a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I've seen them all extinct. It's
There you go.
Then there's the problem with species that are temperature sex dependent in their incubation.
Yeah.
If things are getting warmer, you're definitely going to have an off-kilter balance of warmer produced eggs and offspring, therefore throwing off the gender ratios in a population.
Yeah. It's a great point, for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy how much the weather is tuned into you know, how species evolved to survive in the environments they did. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, I guess when I messaged you guys last night, I was talking, well, let's talk Bredli. The reason is because a couple things came to mind in their environment, right? They're taking, during this thing, I'm watching something somewhere near Uluru, and they basically are showing this dry riverbed with those trees with the, you know, the bark is gone and it's white, and like I'm thinking like something triggers in my head, like, okay, carpet pythons, which for this discussion, let's throw them in there with Bredli and carpets together, right? They're sort of the same you know, animal, if you will, and they're going in these trees that are along these water courses, just waiting for this water to come through so that, you know, all the animals come to drink water, and, you know, then all of a sudden they go hog wild with prey, right? So that's, to me, why food cycling makes so much sense, you know, because there's nothing going on when there's no water there. Then all of a sudden at one part of the year, you know, you have all this water that's coming where it's bringing in, you know, the birds, it's bringing in the, you know, the rodents, it's bringing in the, you know, the kangaroos, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and on and on. But I don't know.
just talking, just slightly off topic, but talking of extinction, what do we think of the Tasmanian tiger pictures?
Are they released? It's today, isn't it?
Have you not? Yeah. Of course,
I haven't
for
seen
me,
them yet.
It's the evening now.
That's right.
So,
All
yeah.
that I've heard is that the museum guy said they were patamelons, and I haven't seen the pictures yet.
I did hear that too.
Pictures have been released. They're not fantastic. It's not, you know, it's not a Tasmanian tiger doing that or anything, but it's definitely food for thought.
I heard there was a cub sighted and two
correct.
adults.
Right.
Yeah, the cub sighting is the best sighting. They've released a night vision photograph of it, and if you put that next to a photograph of a cub, it's just a head-on shot. So if you imagine its head's quite close to the camera, looking down the camera, but because of the eye shine, it's difficult to make out features.
Mm-hmm.
If you put that next to a picture of a Tasmanian tiger, all the features match up: the ear size, the snout, position of the eyes, position of the ears, and type of the ears. Is it pandymelon or padymelon?
I think it's patamelon.
I think it's patamelon. Yeah.
And also, if you superimpose a padymelon next to it, it doesn't fit. The ears, the head shape's wrong, and the ears. So that to me was the most definitive picture. There's also some daytime color shots, but unfortunately it's walking away from the camera.
Mm.
But it is striped. It does carry its tail erect. The ears are in the correct position and they're the right size. It's not got pagamelon ears. But the most interesting thing for me is it's got a hock. Now, not many animals have hocks: cats, dogs, and Tasmanian tigers. It's definitely not a cat, and it's definitely not a dog. And you can clearly see it's got hocks. It's pretty good. It's it's not as good as we'd hoped, but it's pretty exciting. You can see the colour is tan, and it has got black stripe.
Nice.
That's very cool.
So as much as I'm glad Owen's not here because I can say this without him yelling at me. So this is always my argument to Owen when it comes to the whole Bigfoot thing, right? It's not necessarily the idea that it exists or doesn't exist or whatever, but like the idea to say that animals don't exist to me, and you're looking at, especially in Australia, I mean, what's the population? I mean, to say that, I don't know. It just seems like, to me, it would be naive to say that if all of a sudden you saw one that it's not, that I don't know. I would think that it's possible that there are some still
out of all
alive.
those out of all those cryptid species, like I feel like the Eilecene's the most likely, right? I mean, there's thousands of people that say they see them.
Yeah. I would suggest that the amount of sightings coupled with the diversity of the people that are, it's not just, Australian people that are just sat drinking in the jungle all day.
Wait, you guys, they don't do that?
There's such a massive range of people and ages and people that are not into wildlife that have seen them consistently.
Right.
I mean, Eric, I don't know if you heard, but there's a snake in Australia called the Oenpelli python. You might be familiar with that.
I don't know.
If you consider that wasn't known to science till, was it 1970? Go on, you've just done the
72, I think it was 72. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a massive snake, And that was only, I mean, the okapi, the big antelope. Yeah. That was a recent discovery in real terms. I mean, that was that the 1960s, I think, wasn't it, or something like that?
They weren't known to Western science and classified until 1911, but even then, it didn't get. There's still only a handful of institutions in the United States with them.
Yeah, I find it incredible. That's a big animal. So
huge animal.
Yeah.
They're amazing, by the way.
When I think you talk about the Oenpelli, right? When you think about its habitat and it's there. I mean, I can imagine that if you would look into those caves and those rocky outcrops and all, I would imagine that, some of them go down into these big, huge, open, open caves where they can just, I think about our idea, I guess, when people look at it, they just think, oh, they're solid rock, but there's so much habitat in that rock, and there's so many little cracks and crevices that, I mean, it would be impossible to say what's in there or what's not. I mean, when me and Rob were talking about, when I was doing the Rough Scale show, we were talking about the idea of, is it possible that Oenpelli even go up into the Kimberley? I mean, that's possible. Right. I mean, it's perfect habitat. I don't know why they wouldn't be there. What would stop them from going there? But because they haven't been found there. I mean, the place is so remote and so difficult to get to, so how many people can really say that they've been there? And, and then you take into consideration the actual habitat of the animal. I mean, that animal is basically living in those rocks during the day and coming out at night to feed, and that's basically it. So,
and as you say, if you look at such a low density of population and no population in many of those areas,
right?
And even if you're going to do a scientific trip to monitor that with budgets, realistically, how long are you going to be out there for? A month,
right?
You're not going to be out there for 6 months with camera trap looking for, for everything. My big wish, if the thylacine is still alive, it means Duval's gecko might still be alive.
Mm.
There
That
you
would
go.
be incredible. Because if
Yeah.
they find Duval's gecko, I'll know they'll be for sale in Europe within about 2 weeks, and I will, if I can get a big enough.
Uh,
Well,
Well, it's-
the beautiful thing about the scientific method is to say it can't exist is a really hard thing to concretely, say, because you really don't know. And until you can fully disprove it, like you said, go study every inch of that territory throughout the years and find nothing to, validate it. Until that's done, you really can't rule it out. So I'm glad people are still, looking into it. It's exciting.
I still think there's a possibility that there's more carpet pythons on Papua New Guinea.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we have this little section, and to think that they're not like all the other Morelia or Somalia have sort of dispersed to the north and south sides. What would be different with them? Why would that
100%.
be different?
Yeah. And most of what's been imported comes from the areas that are safe and easy to export from.
Correct. Yeah.
And a lot of the other stuff that's untouched by exporters and Westerners is, who knows what's over there.
I would almost venture to say, what if there's blackheads there? Because you have Antaresia and you have Morelia and you have Liasis. All three, you have species in those genus that are found at the top of Australia. And all three of those are also found at the bottom of Papua New Guinea, right? So, why would that be different? I don't know.
Why would Aspidites have not also crossed that area, that threshold? Right.
Well, they're all part of the Australo-Asian expansion and evolution of all the snakes and reptiles down that direction. Some stopped along the way, but at some point in time, they all sort of came down that way. So at one point or another, historically, they did, probably occupy that land before they settled wherever we know them to exist currently.
For sure, yeah. When the sea levels were lower and it was just one landmass, there's no reason why they wouldn't have slithered on up there. If the habitat was suitable.
So I guess this conversation goes to this in a nutshell, to all the herpetoculturists out there. We don't know shit.
Yeah, pretty much. We're just winging it and writing the books as we go along.
We don't know.
Yeah.
So much still left to be discovered.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about in relation to breeding with carpets, and specifically because we brought up the Papuans, is Eric, you've mentioned that you suspect IJs and Papuans don't need to really probably be as cooled as much. So, like, you could probably just food cycle them given where they're located without much of a winter drop. I was just thinking in context of Nipper only having his for a short while and only giving them a short cool down. I mean, I think it's highly possible you could still see reproductive success with them if the female just feels settled in on that regard. They seem to be agreeable with minimal temperature fluctuations.
I think if you're going to be able to breed a carpet python, for lack of a better word, year round, right? At different times of the year, or I think that would be the species. And
no,
I mean, they're basically 12-hour. The fluctuation in the light to night doesn't really change that much, other than just precipitation. Really, is the main thing that changes. So I would think that you could possibly use that to your advantage and sort of tie it in with food cycling, and I bet you would be able to breed them at a different time of the year.
Yeah,
that would be my guess.
Yeah.
Do you with your carpets, you talk about precipitation, do you spray more heavily at different times? Do you spray at all?
I don't. I never had to. I wonder if that would make a difference in combining that with I mean, the better and better technology gets, right? Couldn't we, in theory, somehow tie something to the outside weather, that it's triggered, that when it's raining outside, that somehow that precipitation happens inside the enclosure? I don't know.
Just thinking
Yeah.
about you mentioned you're talking about Papua New Guinea, which has a reasonably stable climate, but it does have a wet and dry season.
Mhm.
Right.
Although the temperatures don't fluctuate massively, it does have a
Right.
wet and a dry season. So
Yeah.
I just wondered if it's another. You say that there's lots of triggers. There's light. There's food. There's temperature. I wondered if precipitation was potentially another trigger.
Mhm.
I know when
Cool.
I've bred some rare sandboas before, the Eric's John Eye. The only way you can get them to breed is to keep them absolutely bone dry and then flood the enclosure. And it's that because where they come from in India, that's exactly what happens. It's absolutely bone dry. Then they have a monsoon season where everything is flooded, and then it doesn't happen again for 2 years or something like that. That's the only way you can breed them. I just wondered if there was.
I
Yeah.
think for me here on the East Coast, again, using a lot of that's why I like snowstorms for breeding carpets, right? Because of that change in barometric pressure. And, I don't know. I think that that is more of a trigger for them than temperature. I don't think that temperature really matters too much with Papuan carpets, in my opinion.
Yeah. I do occasionally miss my pop ones, especially if I see them going in the shed or in the winter here in Sacramento because it's really dry. I will actually miss them down. I missed my Apodora down. I run a humidifier in this room pretty much constantly.
So do I.
Just because it gets so dry here. I don't have the luxury of being in a humid environment. So I do feel like they appreciate it more. I've got juveniles in some tubs with the suspended water bowls, and the females love soaking in those water bowls consistently. They're just like higher humidity for sure.
There has to be something to that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dimper. Sorry.
Do you get solid sheds from your Apodora?
Yes.
Yes.
You do.
Yeah.
I've noticed Apodora, you only need the humidity to be off a tiny bit, and they have terrible sheds.
Mhm.
It's one of the sensitive snakes I've ever kept.
Yeah, they have a very small and thin scalation to them. And I do think, as soon as you get just a touch too dry, it'd be so easy for them to have a snag or a tear and get a bad shed for sure. I've always kept up the humidity with mine.
Yeah, it's the same for me. Speaking to Caspar, who's one of the only people that's ever bred Apodora, and I know everybody goes on about Harmelheras and all that sort of thing, but Apodora I've only been bred a handful of times as well.
Yeah.
He puts his success down to temperature fluctuation, to cooling. He's done it. No, there's only a couple of people in Europe have done it, but he's done it. So,
yeah, the one guy here in the States that I know, well, he produced the ones that I have is his was temperature as well. He went with temperature. Is his main.
The ones that were produced in the States, were they from captive bred animals, or were they from wild caught animals?
I think one was captive bred, and I can't remember which one was which. I have to look it up, but one was captive bred and one was wild caught. I would guess that it was the female that was wild caught, because it seems like males are harder to find wild caught. I don't know why. I don't know why that would be.
Been caught, did egg laying occur? Is it possible that she was gravid when she came in, or is it?
No.
He had him for a few years.
Yeah, he had him for a while.
Yeah, that happened in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and you guys had him on. So you guys did a show. It was either the end of 2016 or the beginning of 2017 that you had him on, and I think the guy's name was Kevin something.
Kevin,
he's from like Maine or Rhode Island.
I want to say, I thought he was from more of the mid U.S., but I could be wrong. I thought he was like Ohio or somewhere out there. But
yeah,
it's been a while.
I made a mental note of that one because I've gone back and listened to it a few times. So
yeah, I think we did a show with Casper too, talking about breeding. Yeah,
that was a good one.
I remember when he was breeding them, you know, like he'd be sending me pictures and I'm like, oh my God, can't believe it. Wow. That's
cool.
wild. Yeah. But yeah, it's weird how we like gravitate towards one species that, you know, and the other ones we sort of like don't give it the same focus. Like, you know, it's like this obsession with Bolinai, or would it be Bolini? I guess. But this obsession with them and trying to reproduce them, and I get it, you know, but like a species like Apodora is sort of like whatever, you know.
Few people seem to know about them outside of like some of the hardcore diehard like.
Yeah, there's not a lot of
scrub
info
and
on them,
python.
right?
Yeah, there's not. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fair. There really isn't a lot of information out there. You don't see a lot of publicity about them compared to other species, so I get that. But yeah, it's interesting how they've kind of been pushed aside a little bit.
And to be honest, I don't know if there really should be mass produced in, you know, following the retic berm or
Sure.
you know, big snake.
Sure.
Because that's a serious snake, man.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Agreed.
So,
agreed. Big snakes are not for everyone. I think we can all agree with that.
For sure.
Would you guys agree? Like Burmese seem to be like, you know, that their level of intelligence seems to go here. You know, retics maybe here, but then Apodora is sort of like, you know what I mean?
Berms
I know
are kind of derpy.
Yeah, I know retics get this sort of label that they're more intelligent than other pythons, but I don't know, man. That species is in a whole different ballpark, in my opinion.
Still got Apodora, yes?
Yes.
And Riley, you've got Apodora, yes?
Yes.
I've got Apodora. Oh.
Lucas.
One of these things don't look like the other.
I've gotten to work with them a bit. We had one big female at the shop when I was working at the vivarium. So I've been in their vicinity, but they're not in my home. Yeah.
You've handled them though?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. So strong. They're
you-
insanely strong.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, they're the best.
And the eyes, like you were talking about, Riley, there's just something to the eyes.
Yeah, you know, a lot of snakes have the ability to move the eye a little bit in the socket. Not a lot, but like, you know, some of the larger species seem to. And when you see an animal sizing you up and kind of looking at you and figuring you out and kind of just dialing you in, but not for any like malice or defensive behavior, they're just like looking at you and just like kind of figuring you out. It's hard to ignore that there's a lot more going on upstairs. When they stop and think about doing something, instead of like retics are kind of reactionary, in my opinion. They're very instinctually fine-tuned and they can be smart, but you have to like flip them out of these modes and they just kind of default to things. Whereas in my experience, an Apodora's default is stop and assess first before reacting. And that, to me, that's a higher level of intelligence.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd agree. The retics that I've worked with have not struck me as particularly intelligent. That's just, you know, that's just my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah, it's not a knock on retics, you know.
No,
It's
they're
just,
beautiful.
No,
you know, it's just,
and I'm just basing that off of completely, you know, anecdotal observation. So I could be wrong. You know, how do we know what the cognitive ability of a snake is? They sure as heck don't make it easy to figure it out. And
there's always exceptions to the rule. Like Cusco, Brian, he's got a bunch of retics that are just sweethearts and don't have that initial reaction, but he's worked with them and conditioned them over years to get them to be like that, and they have the great disposition for that. So I think there's always exceptions to the rule. You've got a bell curve of a population where, you know, the majority of them have that common food instinct reaction. Then there's a small population that are just inconquerably mean. And then there's a small population that are just sweethearts by nature.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, like I tend to talk about the false water cobras striking me as much more intelligent than, and the blackheads more intelligent than the womas. But maybe really all I'm queuing in on is that they're just more visually, you know, cued into things, you know. Maybe that's just the only factor that I'm noticing. And yeah, you know, that doesn't necessarily that's not the end all be all of intelligence, that a species is evolved to be more visual, but it's easier for me to pick up on as a, you know, monkey staring at the snake.
I like how you said.
I have false water cobras.
We're just gonna keep uncovering ones he's forgotten.
I like how last
Oh.
week you said we're just monkeys that drive cars or something like that.
That's one from Nick. Yeah, Nick
yeah.
said that, and I can't unhear it. It's so true.
Yeah. Look at the monkey driving the car.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's, you know, getting back, just circling back to carpets. I think, in my opinion, the reason that you have so many people with different ways to keep carpets and everybody's been successful, and there are different ways of breeding them, whether it's temperature, light, you know, humidity, food, all of the above, whatever, is because I think it's hard to judge carpets in a way because they're so adaptive. I keep equating them to North American rat snakes, right? No matter what kind of climate they're in, no matter where they're at, they use human encroachment to their advantage. And they've adapted to be able to live side by side with us, just, you know, annihilating the environment, and it doesn't seem to affect them. So I think because they're so adaptable, it's so difficult to like pinpoint what they really need, right? As opposed to what they need to survive, like what makes them like. For me, a big eye-opening experience was going to Australia and feeling the humidity and really rethinking my idea of humidity when it comes to carpets, right? If you saw me pre-Australia, I was like, carpets don't need humidity, and, you know, all these, you know, that they shed fine, they do all these things fine, just make sure that they have water and they'll be fine, right? But after being in the environment, I kind of think, like, to me, I come back and, you know, I remember talking with Chris Salemi about this and about humidity affecting them, respiratory infections in the winter. You see them, and like, to me, that humidity, because it dries out their airways, it dries me out, and I get sick or get an infection or whatever. So I would imagine that maybe that's why they, you know, take Nido out of it and all that stuff. But like, you know, just this respiratory infection. So I came back from Australia and added humidity to my room. And I have not, knock on wood, had a respiratory infection since. So
I remember when you came back and we had talked about that, and you had a very profound reaction.
Whew, man,
with that.
It was crazy humid. Like,
yeah,
crazy humid.
I took that to heart and increased the size of water bowls where I could, and now I try to keep my room between 60 and 70%. Period. Like,
going from one environment to the next, you could actually feel the shift in humidity. I never felt that like before, you know. And then when you go into scrub python territory, it's even off the charts, even more, you know. I mean, like, dense undercover, you know, so humid, you know, cool, not hot,
right?
Cool, but humid. So I don't know. Take that as you will.
When you came back from Australia, though, in terms of how you keep stuff is completely different. You know,
100%.
you've got away from keeping in racks. You want to see your stuff. You want to observe what they're doing because you've seen that stuff in the wild. You really have changed.
Yeah, yeah, because I don't know, man. I that's why I believe that you cannot learn that. To me, that's where field herping is invaluable. You know, you cannot get a better teacher, class, whatever, than going into the environment, finding the species, and just taking some notes about what's going on. Like, you know, what's the temperature like? And, you know, what's difficult for me is that, you know, I've only been to Australia twice, right? And I've covered a pretty good, you know, at least on the East Coast. We haven't gone south. So like, but like, get a good feel for some different environments there. And, you know, I don't know. It's just so different than what I pictured in my head before I went, and how it changed the way I look at what they're what they need or what they're looking for, or how can I make them healthier? How can I have them live longer? How can I have them better fecundity? You know, all these things that sort of like we sort of like I think in my head, right? I'm sure you've heard this a million times. Like we've said it a million times on NPR too. Like when me and Owen are talking, oh yeah, this clutch, I got a couple slugs, and it's just maybe the male didn't get her quick enough, or she's too hot at this point, or whatever the case would be. And it's like, is that the reason? Is it?
Right.
Just taking shots in the dark, I guess, but I don't know. Man, I went on a rant. Sorry, guys.
No, that's great. that knowledge is invaluable,
Yeah.
and it's I can't wait to get over there and have that experience myself, because like I completely know what you're saying, right? Like as somebody that does work in the field a bit and I like herping and whatnot, I feel like that really influences my thoughts about the species we have here. But I can't necessarily transfer that over to the Australian stuff. Like I can to an extent, but it's it's a different continent.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but exactly what you're saying, it makes so much sense that once you're just in that environment, all the little things on the periphery that you wouldn't necessarily consider, it just becomes apparent, and that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think any data in the field is going to help the hobby. I mean, in the past, people have gone, oh, well, I've looked at the weather for, I don't know, Adelaide, and it's this temperature. Well, that's great, but the snakes aren't out on a sidewalk or anything like that.
Yeah.
They're not at the airport where that reading's being taken.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're finding snakes when you're flipping rocks. So we need data for what the temperatures and the humidity are like under the rocks, under the logs, in the caves.
Micro
In the
limits.
burrows.
Exactly.
We were last week for lab, we were reading a paper about monitors being a ecosystem engineer in Australia. And one of the really interesting numbers that was stated in that paper was that 10 feet down in one of these burrows, it's 84 degrees. That's insane. Like that far down to still be that warm, that doesn't make any sense. But if you're a snake and you're incubating a clutch down there, that's interesting to note.
100%. I mean, if you look at things like cave racers, the Ridley Eye, and things like that, they're in a really humid, hot, tropical environment. But as soon as you go in the caves there, it's dropping down to 55 degrees. And that's their environment. Yeah, they might come from Cameroon, Thailand, or whatever. Cameroon Highlands, sorry, in Thailand or whatever. But it's not the outside temperatures we need to worry about. Their environment is inside the cave. What are the temperatures like inside the cave?
Yeah,
100%. When when I went to Chillago, when we were there, there's these caves that you can sort of go into, right? I've told the story before, but like to your point, it was like, I don't know, if you tempt a rock outside on a rock and you tempt it, you're looking at 150 degrees on that rock, and it's 100 degrees. It's dry. It's just hot. The sun is just baking you, and you go inside the cave. I have pictures of it. I'll send it to you guys afterwards, but you go inside the caves and like the temp gun says 74 degrees. And to me, at that point, I wasn't even focused on reptiles. I was like, okay, so I'm sitting here looking at cave art, from the Aboriginal people. And I'm like, okay, this is how they survived, and then it's kind of trippy when you're sitting there and you're like, 10,000 years ago, there was a bunch of people sitting here surviving off this land, which like, I'm this little prissy baby that like, I'm going out, I'm like, oh my God, it's so hot, and they're like, weak, smack. But yeah, you can see how the reptiles can use that to their advantage, and how they survive,
Why I need to get to North America and start temp gunning some habitat.
What do you want me to temp gun? It's
everything.
Just keep one around everywhere you go.
I should have had one when I found that
The
North
rattlesnake.
Pacific rattler.
Yeah.
Well, just going through when I sent you that picture of the Pine Barrens, right? The thing that stood out to me, and I told Nipper this, but I was like, I'm driving and I'm like, man, there's timbers in there. There's bull snakes. There's all these different eastern hognose and milk snakes and rat snakes and all these species that are in there, and they're just buried down under the ground. And meanwhile, there's a foot of snow on top of them, which you would never equate the two with snakes and snow. But there you go, new show, Snakes and Snow.
Snakes and snow geese.
But yeah, it's just amazing that they are able to survive through that, So
Yeah.
We get so caught up on how we keep our animals and thinking of things in terms of a basking spot and a thermal gradient as far as the enclosure setup. But what most hobbyists and pet keepers that aren't, just like geeking out on this stuff 24/7 like we do, what they're not necessarily reading about or thinking about or learning about is ambient temperature and how important that is. The ambient in your snake room or house, or paying attention to ambient, because there are some animals that use those basking spots and those hot rocks, a lot of monitors, a lot of uromastics, lizards like that, but not all reptiles are a basking species. Some of them don't even see daylight, you know what I mean? Most of them live under dense canopies where very little sunlight comes through, and they're being ectotherms, they're relying on the overall climate, so they're not necessarily experiencing too much variation until they find those little burrows or hollowed logs, and that's where those microclimates within something comes in. And I think about that so much and how it pertains to affecting the enclosure, because I can throw a hot spot there, but when that turns off at night, it's going to drop to a certain level based on the ambient of the room. And it's just so overlooked at how important that is, because you can really just shock animals in an unseasonably weird pattern.
yeah.
Which is why, going back to what we was talking about when we first started, I think I really do think we should go forward and try and keep species from the same continent, even down to the similar sort of area, because then the ambient temperature will be correct for everything.
Right.
Right.
I'm super excited about getting Cloudberry and Lepidus.
Nice.
I've had them by now, but there's no show. The shows have all stopped for a year, but I would have had them by now. But part of the excitement of that is not just having the species. I cannot wait to build the vivs for them. Because I want to absolutely geek out on the construction, and part of the construction is I want to get the lighting right. I want to get the UVA, UVB correct. I want to get, that's I'm always banging on. I'm going away from ceramic heaters now. I'm using deep heat emitters. I think it's so much better. I'm using marine aquarium LED lights because I think the natural light is better. We can really, obviously if you've got a large collection, it's going to be difficult to do it for everything. But for certain species, and I think, as you said, some species, it doesn't matter because 90% of their existence is in burrows underground. But for some species, particularly rattlesnakes, they are so light orientated.
Yes.
So we can really get that feel. I don't know if you use the deep heat emitters. I use the Arcadia ones. But when you put your hand underneath it, it's like you're putting your hand out of the window and it's sunny. It feels exactly the same. And I think that it's got to be so much better than the dry heat from the ceramic heaters that we've historically used. So for things like rattlesnakes, which are active baskers, or the European vipera, or stuff like that, which are out pretty much all day basking, it's got to be a fantastic way to keep them. I'm excited about building those vivs.
It's crazy how much you can learn, from just sort of keeping like that. I mean, you can observe things that you wouldn't be able to observe in Iraq, and sort of, like why I sort of looked at things a little bit differently when I came back from Australia is because I wanted to keep watching them. I wanted to see if my snakes did what those snakes did. I wanted to see if they were, I remember a while back on NPR, we talked about, arboreal tendencies with carpets. Right. And I think in the early days of carpets, it was either two things. One, you gave a shelf You know, the AP sort of, Anthony Caponetto designed that cage with the shelf, and the carpet would sort of sit on the shelf. And then you had the chondro style where it's just sort of a perch, right? But I don't think carpets perch that way. I think they're more of I need a couple spots, sort of like a tree boa, right? I need to feel secure here.
Amazon tree boas do that. They're drapers.
Drapers, yeah.
Correct. You know, and like just seeing that snake in the wild, the Darwin that we saw triggered that to me. And, of course, Gavin, luckily we had him there with us, and him telling us about, the arboreal tendencies of those, like meaning that they never even touch the ground. So like, I don't know. To me, if that snake is doing that, it's hard to keep it in a rack where it can't do that. You know what I mean?
It's hard, when you oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Now you've gone over to monitors,
Yes.
Now you're going to become monitor boy. For you to
I like it. I'm a boy. Yes.
Monitor man.
You're all very ancient. Yeah, the scope for you to really get to grips with the lighting and the UV, and particularly again, monitors, as is the Australian dwarf monitors, they're out in the sun a lot. I think it'd be fantastic. And you can argue as much as you like. You are going to have a massive collection of Australian dwarf monitors. Guarantee it.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. As I look over there and watch them. Yeah, they're great. And then when you have one, the justification of why you don't get them is I don't want to deal with the bugs. But then when you got one eating bugs, you're like, I can throw some Staphylococcus in here. I can, a couple knobbies, it won't matter, And then next thing you know, you got Kimberly rocks and, what the hell?
After your Noctag episode, it was so hard not to just go out and buy a load of Noctails. They're so cheap over here.
Oh, really?
Oh, man.
Yeah, they're probably a quarter of the price they are in the States.
Wow.
Yeah. But no, I'm going to be strong.
The cheap ones for us are like $200 to $300.
Yeah, for the commoner species, you probably pick them up for around £100. Even the rarest, again, because everything's smuggled through Europe before it goes anywhere else. Even the rarer species, you can get quite a lot of stuff here.
What's it say?
So Ryan wanted to ask your take on varied diets, including parts of prey.
The way I tend to do things, and again, a lot of it was sparked from podcasts that I've heard years ago that got me thinking. I really do try and feed quality foods, because if you're buying rodents, they're not frozen rodents. They don't have the best diet. Obviously, for the rodent producers, unless it's a small private company, if you're talking about a mass frozen food producing company, they're going to be on cheap commercial diets. So I breed for the smaller stuff, for the bush vipers and stuff like that. They tend to prefer live, particularly like hopper mice and stuff like that. So I breed my own multi-mammates, and I'm very careful with their diet. They eat better than I do.
Nice.
All my lizard feeders, and sadly I've got a load of lizard feeders. So I buy in bulk house geckos. I'll buy them 100 house geckos at a time, and I will keep the house geckos for a month or so before that particular cycle before I'll feed them.
Essentially, like gut loading them.
100%, yeah. So they will get vitamin dusted crickets and roaches and stuff like that. Even down to when I'm buying my live insect food, I won't feed them straight away. I will keep the insects for a while, and I will make sure that they've had a proper diet, trying to get as much plant-based material in them, which I collect from my garden, so I know it's not had any pesticide sprayed on it or anything like that. Just so that, the D3 is getting broken down all the way through the chain and passed on, as it goes on. If I am feeding my bigger stuff, I tend, and I know I've been criticised for this in the past, but I've always done it. I tend to feed my bigger stuff wild caught stuff that either I've shot or has been shot locally if I can. Well, I live in the countryside now, so we get pheasants, we get partridges, that sort of thing. I feed a lot of pigeons,
Nice.
a lot of rabbits and that sort of thing, and a lot of adult quail. So they should have had a decent diet prior to being killed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I do.
That's
Have
awesome
you-
that you're able to get those house
Yeah.
geckos. Like, are those bred for being feeders in the
No, they're
UK?
wild caught. So
Okay.
there is, people go, oh, is there a different? They could transfer pathogens, but I haven't had a problem so far. I mean, it's the snakes I have that feed on lizards. I mean, it's their natural diet in the wild,
Right.
and to be I don't know. I think it's almost natural for the snake to maybe have some parasites in it anyway. As
No
long as the
one's
snakes
deworming the wild ones, right? So, yeah.
So as long as the snakes aren't stressed and they're kept correct temperatures and they've got a regular diet, they seem to thrive. Touch wood, I've not had a problem so far, and I've been feeding live lizards for ages. I use either anoles or house geckos. Now my snake building, because if any of you have worked with house geckos, you open a box and 5 of them will get out before you've done anything. I have a good colony of house geckos living in my snake building. So I just, every so often, all ranges and all sizes, which is nice if you've got hatchlings, because there's hatchlings running around. I'll just pick one off the wall and I can check it out.
Yeah, there's a resident population at the shop I used to work at as well, just running loose. I find the eggs on top of the cages.
Have you fed your Apodora any snake prey?
I haven't. The reason I've made a deliberate decision not to do that, and I have, I got friends with snake feeders that so I can get snakes if I want to. The reason I haven't done that is because I knew I was aiming to pair them up, and I'd rather that they weren't particularly scented on snakes or had a particular liking for snakes, whether it will make any difference or not. But I was nervous pairing them up, so
Sure.
For that reason, that's why any of the kings or anything like that, or the milks, although they will eat snakes, I won't feed them. I give them all my friends got cribos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've fed snakes to anything that I have that is a known snake eater in the wild. Not in large quantities, just kind of every once in a while. It seems to be seasonal around hatchling season of any other species. I'll have 1 or 2, or or somebody gives me a frozen baby or something like that. And but I've had my cribos eat snakes on several occasions, and the Apodora, even while he was younger, last year I had a baby Antaresia die after about a year of starving itself out, and he ate that rather seamlessly. So yeah, I don't know. I from a dietary standpoint, to me, I think anything we can do to replicate their wild diet, if it's a species that's known to have certain things, are very. But at the same time, I've also had my Cribo male try and kill and eat my female. And is that because it was a little early in the season and she wasn't cycling? Or would he still have done that if he had never been fed snakes in his entire life? And over the 7 years I've had him, he's definitely had his fair share of snakes. So hard to say how that variable played a role, but that is something to to think about for sure.
And it's you think of how many people keep blackheads. What's the natural diet in the wild? It's probably more reptilian based than it is mammal based.
Yeah, they're probably eating sand monitors.
Same for womas. I mean, there's WOMA study where they're 90% reptile.
I think womas are actually more reptiles than blackheads.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It can't be doing them any good to just be on a completely mammal, fatty, lots of based diet.
Yeah, mine are 90% quail for that reason.
Now, yeah, that is a thing. I would completely agree with you. The majority of my stuff, I try and feed more avian prey than anything else. I just think it's more natural.
Sure.
Yeah. Reptiles with feathers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I completely. Yeah. I've got. Very rarely do I use rats anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
There's different fat to calcium to protein ratios, different types of oils that have different effects on their skin and metabolism. I think, unless it's a species that's known for just eating local wild rats or something, anything you can do to throw some variety in there is good. Like the blackheads at the shop, they'll occasionally get bird prey or whole drumsticks or something like that. So yeah.
Man, you guys are going to love Dr. Zach on the next night. You're going to love
all the digestion.
I already love him.
We talked about a lot of this stuff. I'm curious, right? We talked about varied diet, right? So one of the questions that I asked, and I'm curious what you guys think on this. When you see carpet pythons in the wild, and you see it's always this snake with this huge meal in it, more so than I see with other pythons. Besides, your typical African rock eating a gazelle, olive pythons eating freshwater crocodiles and stuff like that. But you're seeing this animal. So, part of the discussion we had was maybe they're more geared towards taking a couple large meals in the year rather than, eating, I don't know, every couple of weeks or whatever. And then I think about, I'm sure you guys have all seen the video where Steve Irwin goes to that farm and the mice have overrun it and they're running all over the place and he's just holding, handfuls of mice, and there's the carpet python, just nailing mouse after mouse after mouse after mouse, and I'm like, okay, so I mean, I know that they're opportunistic, right? But it just seems odd to me. And maybe it's just because I focus on carpets. I have all these different locality carpet, files and files of locality pictures of carpets. And whenever they've eaten a meal, it's they're just boom, this big, huge meal. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that that's what they're going after, or?
I would suggest, obviously they're opportunistic, but I would suggest, and I think we've all said it before, everything we keep is overfed. We've all herped.
Yes.
We all field herp. Have you ever seen a wild snake in the proportions of the ones that we keep in captivity? No, they're always
only that water python that Eric found.
Yeah,
that scared me when I saw that.
That thing was crazy.
I think that scared a lot of people, and they sold their water pythons like, no.
I don't know, man. There was a sign that said the snake eats the puppies, so watch your dogs. So I don't know. Maybe that snake is cashing in on the your
and
pets.
a few poodles, but no, yeah. To your point, no, they're always half-starved, skinny-looking things. Yeah.
And I think it makes it a very valid point that I can't think of many snakes when I've actually seen and photographed snakes that were actually in the process of eating something. The thing they were eating, now, that might be a little, I don't know, a dice snake or a viper or something, a little viper. The thing they was eating was always large compared to the size of the snake. And I think in captivity, we don't do that. We tend to go, his head's that big, so I'll give him a mouse that's that big or something, But I do think there's something, and I know Rob does this quite a lot. I think, metabolically, I think it might suit the snake better to feed it a couple of large meals than consistently feeding it small meals. I know, like with the scrubs and things like that, I give them adult quail. Now, adult quail, as you know, adult quail's about that big. Or my scrubs are about that round. So that is a big bulge when they have it, but they seem to cope with it really, really well. So I think if we can replicate nature as much as possible, I think that's the way forward. And I do think you're right that a few large meals, I think, will be much more beneficial to the snake than a lot of small meals.
Agreed.
I don't know about pine snakes and things. I mean, you lot know more about pine snakes in the wild than I will ever know because I don't go out to go and see them. I tend to
Well,
feed
wouldn't
my.
I would think that, you know, with them being colubrids, that they're more of you know, I think they're geared more to eat more consistently, right? You know,
They have a much faster metabolism, and things with
Mhm.
like pine snakes and bull snakes and gopher snakes, instead of eating and even like dry marcon, instead of eating one really big meal once in a while, they're specifically designed to raid nests and plug up burrows of rodents, or you know, get eggs or just whatever it is and smash eat everything in there. Like, you ever seen a bull snake take a rodent, smash it against the wall of its enclosure, and then throw its coils around and it's pressing into things? You know, a lot of these snakes are designed to just gorge and do that, and then go out and hunt the more active hunter species. But things like pythons and carpets and a lot of that stuff, I think they're just more ambush, opportunistic, and have the ability to take on a massive meal and have that sustain them for the unforeseeable future, because nothing's guaranteed in some of those harsh climates they're found in.
Right. Yeah, I feel like it's another part of keeping where we should let the natural history of the animal in that particular species guide what we do. But it's tricky because finding out like an annual you know, feeding history for a particular animal, that's a really hard study to perform. You know,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to track an animal that long and not influence its behaviors, you know, just from being around and messing with it. You
Sure.
know,
Yeah, I like the way Vin Russo has done that with some of his island boas, the really small dwarf, you know, like Cocker Key and some of those smaller boas, because somehow he and his team over the decades, and folks he works with and colleagues, have managed to ascertain that some of these islands only experience bird migration for about 12 weeks out of the year. And then otherwise, there's really not much there for predation for those animals. So they gorge during those 12 weeks of a year, and then that's all they get. And you know, you think about that, that's pretty damn extreme. That's like going 6 months with nothing, and then you have a few, like 3 months of eating a ton, and then you have 9 months of nothing after that.
Right.
You know, it's amazing.
yeah. When I think of colubrids, especially North American colubrids, I think of like our winter, right? And they're not going to be eating from basically what, you know, like November until May.
Yeah.
So I would think that they're just trying to eat, like constantly just trying to get as many meals in them as they can. And, you know, as opposed to like a python where they're from the areas that they're from, for the most part, are more stable, so that, you know, they're able to maybe eat a meal, go a long time without eating another meal, because they don't have to worry about, you know, some type of time frame to hibernate or ruminate, you know.
And they can also be much more efficient with the nutrients they're consuming. Their metabolism does things over a spread amount of time, whereas colubrid metabolism is much more truncated and goes through it faster. So if they're eating a lot of little things and they're able to keep up that intake, that rate of consumption, then they'll do fine. Whereas pythons can grab a large meal, because it can take them a week or two to digest it, depending on how big it is. They're really spending a lot of time and energy sequestering, you know, a lot of the nutrients out of there. So one big meal, based on how they digest, is probably more efficient than if a carpet were to sit there, grab a tiny little sparrow or something, expel all that and, you know, energy in their metabolic process and the digestion on something so small that it seems like it's probably more advantageous for them, just based on how they digest. And I'm sure,
yeah,
you know, Dr. Loafman has tons of insight on that.
Oh man, it was. I'm probably hyping this episode to be more than it is. But when I learned something about snakes that I didn't know, and like not you know, like what color, you know, what happens when you breed this to that and you know, that kind of stuff, it's exciting too. Don't get me wrong, but when you find out how, I don't know, for that lack of a better word, like efficient they are, like they're so efficient, like like he's talking about what, and we sort of talked about this with like Python shutting down their system, to where so they don't have to allocate resources to sort of keep that going. I mean, that's just amazing. We can't shut our digestive system down because we got no food. I don't know. It's just, to me, they're just amazing animals.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
are you aware of the olm? Do you know olms?
No.
No.
What's that?
There's a thing called an olm. That's OLM, and it's a large blind cave salamander, completely aquatic.
Okay.
It's about 1.5 feet long, bright pink, no eyes, and it lives in the cave systems in Slovenia. And I was lucky enough to go down, another bucket list thing. I had a little swim with the olms underground in the cave, and it's really cool. You get a long way underground, and it's very cold, and then you shouldn't protect it, but you strip off and you jump in and you have a little swim around with the olms, and they're great little things. But the olms, because of where they come from, I mean, we're talking, miles underground, there is no food. The only time they get fed is when there's flash floods and dead insects and things get washed in there. And they reckon an olm can go 50 years without feeding.
Wow.
Holy crap. I'm looking these up right now, and they look like blind axolotls with a truncated head. They almost have like a Solomon Island boa shaped head with the gills, and they're like long pink blind. Wow, those things look so foreign.
That's crazy.
You've got the Texas blind cave salamander, haven't you? Which is quite cool. I'm such a salamander geek. Another reason.
Oh yeah.
You have got. I mean, we've got quite a few species of salamander in Europe, but you have got fantastic salamanders. I could do, trips just for salamanders out there.
Oh yeah.
I think the Northeast and up there has the best of it. We've got some in California with our California tigers and the newts and whatnot. The giants, yeah. But then seeing all the marbled and the blotches and the spotteds and the arboreals and the slender, just everything. Yeah, they're fascinating.
But your Texas blind salamanders are very similar to the olm, except the olms are much bigger. There's debate at the moment whether it's a separate species or just a subspecies, but there's the Parkeri, and they're the same as that, but they're bigger and they're black. And I was lucky enough to actually go and photograph those as well. Just incredible to see, yeah.
50 years.
I had a coworker back in Santa Barbara when I was at the zoo there. She was fortunate enough to go travel over to Japan and tag along on some field studies, and she got to see Japanese giants in the wild. She got to see the hybrids in a laboratory, and while they were studying the hybrid vigor and how the hybrids are actually a huge problem. And so she got to go out and do night surveys in these creeks in Japan and see wild ones that they were tracking with radio telemetry and studying, and see the breeding facility and how particular these water systems and enclosures have to be set up with underground shelters and caves for them. And just, I mean, when you see something like that and think about that exists in a waterway somewhere, and that there's variations of them all over the world, and pretty much every continent, you have some sort of unique but similar animal that fills that niche that looks something like that. It's a whole nother level of just like bizarre appreciation.
100%. I mean, it's on my bucket list. It's another thing I need. I like swimming with things. I don't know why. So I want to go and swim with manatees in Florida. 100%. I want to go and swim with giant salamanders in Japan. That's got to be amazing.
Got to find some hellbenders here in the States too.
That's right.
Start hellbenders. Because it's one of those things, and I think we've talked about it maybe on air or off air before. When you're a child and you're getting into herps, you have certain books, and each generation will have a different book that was out at the time. And I know I'm ancient, so I didn't have the internet when I was small. I don't know about you, Eric, but I didn't have. There was no.
I did not. No.
So everything you take for granted I'll just look that up like you just did then. Oh, look an arm up, bang. I'll talk to somebody about this. They're in America. I'll just WhatsApp them or I'll get a message. There was none of that. we had to go to the library and get a book out.
That was my ritual every week. I think the internet was just coming along, but you couldn't just Google stuff back then. Google wasn't a thing. So yeah, it was libraries every week.
So when you got these books, they become like a massive part of your life. And for me, and it's different for every generation, and you will have a book and I will have a book and Eric will have a book. You probably don't even know what a book is, Lucas. You probably still
I knew it was coming. I knew that was coming.
But for me, the two massive iconic species that you'd have on the cover of the book, it's the rattlesnake. And that's why I'm really into rattlesnakes. But it was also things like the fire salamander was a thing. Really want to, this is an incredible thing. I need to see it in the wild. And the mud puppy was the other one.
Oh, yeah.
You get a picture and you think this is a dinosaur. This is incredible. Yeah. And you read about, they're in the rivers in America. And you think, wow, what must it be like to just walk around in these places in America and flip a rock and you've got a mud puppy underneath. Just incredible things. I genuinely think that's why I'm so ridiculously obsessed with North American herps, is because most of the books from when I was small, when I was a child, focused mostly on North American herps. Whereas probably, Eric, yours probably focused most on Australian herps, I would say.
Yes. Well, for me, it was more pythons. I don't know, like pythons just in general. They were like, I don't know. They were just so exotic when I was a kid, It was like, oh, yeah, I had a rat snake, garter snake, this, that, king snake, all this stuff. And even when my dad had all the venomous stuff, I still was, for whatever reason, I was drawn to pythons. I always wonder that, like, why are some people boa people, colubrid people, python people, like,
yeah.
It all comes back down to their upbringing.
I think it's, the earliest remembrance I have of a snake was we went to the Natural History Museum. I was 5 years old. They pulled out a ball python. To me, the thing was gigantic, but it's an adult ball python, probably 5-6 feet, whatever. And they wanted somebody to put it around their neck. And, I just volunteered to do it, went up, of course my mom is with me and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're going to do this, and from then on, it was just, so that's probably what it was, probably that.
Yeah. I mean, I said to you, I think I said it on your show, I can remember the first herp I ever saw. And that was at the Natural History Museum in London.
Right.
The real Natural History Museum. The one with Charles Darwin, that Natural History Museum, And I must have been about 5 years old, and they brought us out a little bowl with some stones in, and they lifted up a stone, and there was a fire salamander in there. And I've never seen anything so vibrant, and it was alive. It was like are you familiar with fire salamanders?
Yeah.
Just an incredible species. And that was it. I was hooked at 5 years old. And I've now seen all but one subspecies of fire salamander in the wild. And that's taken 30 years to do, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird how those things it's weird how that affects you and how you sort of run with that for the rest of your life if you're I don't know.
For sure.
It's cool. Cool.
Oh. I remember my first snake was a cow king, and then I remember my first really impressionable moment with reptiles was going and seeing a bunch of baby bearded dragons from us loaning out our female as kids, and then scooping up a bunch of babies, and then over in the distance seeing what I didn't know at the time, but looking back was probably one of the earlier albino berms, because that was in the 90s, so I just have that image etched in my brain, and it's so far different than what I keep and obsess over now.
My first were a pair of garter snakes from Mendocino County that we set up in like a half land, half water aquarium in the garage. They were so cool. I loved it. They both escaped because we didn't know what we were doing, but
yeah,
just so cool. But it is interesting, Eric, like you say, how the certain snakes, pythons, boas, colubrids, like something usually grips you more than others, right? Like I had to go through a bunch of colubrids and rosy boas and whatnot before I realized when I had my first Brettles python, like that's my thing.
Right.
And I don't know why, but it's there for sure.
Yeah, I think the only other, so I remember that, and I remember vividly as a kid, like when my dad first got rattlesnakes, the first one he got a pair of Western Diamondbacks, and like just to see, like, I guess for me growing up, like nature series, I think of like Wild America and stuff like that. And like you're watching, obviously rattlesnakes were something that were so different than other snakes. So like it seemed like all shows about snakes seemed to focus either on rattlesnakes or cobras, you know what I mean? And, but still to date, probably the most impressive snake, most intimidating snake that I've ever seen is an Eastern Diamondback. When my dad had an Eastern Diamondback, I mean, whew,
I love that species. I mean,
yeah, so do I.
I have a fondness
shit.
for rattlesnakes. I've got a skeleton, a skull of an Eastern tattooed on me, and then I've got the eye of a Western here. And
Nice.
hands down, some of my most enjoyable times in zoos were working with that Eastern Diamondback, because she hated me, and everyone that interacted with her absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting to learn how her behaviors were seasonally. She laid a full thing of slugs one year, had never been with a male, 15 slugs, and just kind of working with her and learning to respect her. But just that big, impressive head, those black eye stripes, that big triangular nose shield, and that just, they're just the most impressive North American snake, hands down. I absolutely love those things.
Yeah, man.
That's one of the episodes of Crocodile Hunter too that I'll never forget, was when Steven and Terry were looking for the giant Eastern Diamondback, and they find this big ass one in the water.
Dude, they're huge. They're so big.
Their heads are like this big, man.
Yeah.
You're like, what the hell?
Dude, a 5-footer weighs like 10 pounds or something like that. You lift them on a hook and your hook is bending, so you got to choke up. Like I specifically remember that this animal required me to choke up where the handle of my hook was up here, and we're talking a 40-inch hook. So now all of a sudden I've taken it down to about 24 inches, and this 5-foot animal, and I'm just like, God damn it, I need to go to the gym for you. And the hooks are just like just bowed, and man, it was just, that snake commanded respect.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
They're amazing. They're beautiful, and to think that, like, I get why people might be afraid of venomous or not want to keep them or whatever, but to not respect an animal like that, or at least see the beauty in it and why they're there, is just baffling to me. They're such amazing creatures.
Yeah, I can't imagine walking. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was fortunate enough. I was talking to, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I don't want to crucify it. Derek Dijkstra.
Dijkstra, I think.
Is it Dijkstra?
I think so.
I was talking to him, and he very kindly today sent me the complete list of all North American rattlesnakes and subspecies.
Oh, that's cool.
So nice. Actual list to tick off.
Nice.
89 things to tick. If you're going to do all the subspecies, 89. It's about 40 species if you count the ones that just bleed into Mexico. But there's about 40 different species of rattlesnakes in the US, and if you add the subspecies, it's about 89.
That's awesome.
We've got some work to do, Eric. We've got some work to do.
Trips to plan, herps to see.
Yeah.
Somebody's just texting me about a trip to Utah in May.
Oh, you're killing me. Do you know, what is the feeling in the US at the moment regarding, do you think you'll be open to travel, or?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Internationally?
Yeah. Will I be able to get to America this year is my question.
I think you have a better shot of getting into America than I have to get into Australia.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
I don't see Australia being open this year at all.
No.
But I would hope, I'm still hoping to get to America late September or something.
Well, don't forget, we're doing that. When is it? October?
You're doing the Snake Road in October, aren't you?
Arizona. Yeah.
Yeah. If I don't even care if I've got to do 2 weeks quarantine when I get back to the UK. I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We tried to push it out as far as we could, just in case of that. But
I mean, I've had a gap. I'm like Wolverine. I'm indestructible now. Yeah. That's my.
I think there's good hope for that. I mean, some of the big shows in California are still advertising that they're happening July and August. So, and California has been very like, nope, we're closing, everything, and now it seems to be like, flights are happening to and from different spots. Like it seems to be opening up slowly but surely. So I wouldn't be surprised if come this fall, folks that either have negative tests or the vaccine will be able to travel.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for you, Nipper. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
My fingers are crossed for you, bud.
I've got everything crossed. I've had a bad pack for about a year and a half now. So
sounds like my Australia bag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn it.
Sorry, Riley.
I know.
Matt Somerville posted up. He has a YouTube. Shit, now I'm drawing a blank on his channel. But anyway, he has this the Natural Herb Keeper, right? Yeah, definitely check that out if you haven't checked that out. Anyway, he did his trip to like just a Western Australia trip that he did, and I don't know if you've seen some of his photography and what he's seen in the wild and all these different. I mean, he's the one that took the picture of that crazy Flinders carpet, that like orange and So, but anyway, he had Western Australia, and immediately I was like, oh, what a bummer. That was us. We should have been there, man. And here we are.
Yeah.
But
we'll get there. Redemption.
next time. Yeah.
You said he had a YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's called the Natural Herb Keeper. You want to see some natural enclosures? Holy shit, man. This guy's the next level, man. It's like he's the one. Do you ever see the one where it has like the cracked soil?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? That enclosure with the cracked soil.
I must follow him on Instagram because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Awesome guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, looks like I've got some videos to catch up on that.
Yeah. It was really nice.
I don't think it'll happen this year, but next year, I think you should all come over to Europe and we should do a little European road trip for vipers.
Oh, I would love that.
Heck yeah.
Yes. The Vipera genus out there.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
NPR on the road.
I was supposed to go to Europe for the first time in 2020 for music stuff, and that didn't happen. So, hey, let's do it for snakes.
Yeah.
If we did it, we could do a road trip in Spain and cover the Pyrenees into France. And even then, going from France, going to Germany and Austria, you'd get so many cool vipers.
I took French in high school.
Perfect. We'll be just fine.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Lucas. Show me the vipers.
Seems adequate. Well, unless you guys have anything else you wanted to rattle on and bring up, we're at our 2-hour mark.
I'm good. Digging into this book. Here's a book I recommend. I'm always with the books.
Islands
and Snakes.
All right. Get on your reading list, folks. You got homework to do.
Yeah. Looks pretty good.
Nice.
We'll see.
Islands and Snakes. Very cool.
Nipper, thank you so much for joining us today.
Nearly finished the Arizona book now.
Oh, impressive. That's a thick one.
That is a book.
I gotta eat my Wheaties to pull that one off the shelf.
Wear a helmet so it doesn't come crashing down. Yeah. What happened to Eric? Bludgeoned to death by his own book.
But
yeah, well, thank you again for joining us, Nipper. I'm not sure what time it is over there. It's probably the evening for you, yeah?
It's just gone 8 o'clock in the evening here.
Okay, cool. Not too bad. So we're not keeping you up through the wee hours of the night.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast. It's been great.
Oh, yeah. No, anytime. We're very grateful to have your wisdom and insight on here. So for sure. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Great to see you all.
Yeah, you too.
You haven't heard nothing yet. Wait to hear the Field Herping podcast. It's coming
Can't
out.
wait.
I'm working on it. It's all recorded. It's just a matter of putting it together.
Can't wait.
So,
Excellent.
Did you want to throw out any contact information or anything, Nipper?
If anybody wants to get hold of me, I'm always happy to talk about snakes, particularly North American ones. Then get me on my Facebook, which is just Nipper Reed. And please follow me on Instagram because I take some reasonably nice pictures, and it would be nice if people gave me some likes.
Beautiful.
What's your username on Instagram there?
It's Nipper Reed again. So
Perfect. All right.
Simple and easy.
simple and easy.
Yeah.
awesome.
What about you, Lucas?
You can find me on all the thingies, Centralian Exotics, and www.centralianexotics.com.
Nice. Eric, you want to try and rattle off all the shows and everything?
Yeah, I'm pretty good at it now, right?
All right.
So, podcast wise, Morelia Python Radio. There's Carpet Cliff Notes. There is Carpets and Coffee, as you're watching now. There is Student of the Serpent. And there is the Field Herping podcast. And of course, there's Colubrid Corner, which an episode's coming out actually today.
Sweet.
And then
Nice.
Tomorrow will be the Zach Loafman episode of NPR.
Beautiful.
And then we got some cool stuff lined up. And hopefully, I'm going to say by early next week, we will have the first Field Herping podcast
Ooh.
up.
Nice.
As long as it's approved by Nipper, we are good to go.
Final edits. Yeah.
There's
Very
a lot
good.
of editing in it. Yes, it's definitely different than. I think people will like it. I think.
Can't
I'm
wait.
stoked. Yeah.
I wish somebody made one that I could listen to, but since they didn't, we have to make it.
Glutton for punishment.
Right.
Yep. And then the last one is Humans of Herpetoculture.
Got to
Yep.
get back on it.
Yeah. Come on, Lucas.
School
Come on.
ruined me, but I
Yeah.
need to make time. I need to make
You
time.
and you.
Riley, do you want to be next? You want to come on?
Hey, whatever. You know where I'm
There
at.
you
You
go.
can hit me up. Easy
There we
to find.
go.
Yeah. For me, it's just Riley's Reptiles on everything and Riley Jimison on YouTube, and that's about it. So
Cool.
All right. Well, we're gonna get on out of here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Big thanks to Nipper for making time for us this evening across the pond. And
Yes.
yeah,
Pleasure
enjoy
as
the
always.
coffee. Still enjoy coffee. Enjoy your carpets, and yeah, we'll catch y'all next week.
All right. Later, guys.
Yeah.
See you.
See ya.
How do I hit?